I love to work on the forehand. This is like a Spanish thing in Spain. They're obsessed with developing a forehand weapon, usually with a lot of topspin, unless you're Bautista Agut, maybe. Or very rarely, most of the Spanish players play with really good topspin with a loose arm, and they generate high RPM and a very quick racket. So as the racket's accelerating to the ball, there's a whippiness, and the racket flies through the air very quickly. So there's a quick acceleration of the racket, and it almost looks like a blur. It does look like a blur. And so when I have young kids, I'm thinking down the road, I want a forehand like that. And unfortunately, what I see taught to the majority of young children in this country is the opposite of a blur or a whip. I see and the opposite of loose. I see a lot of stiff, blocked, cramped, tight, locked. You can fill in the adjective that you'd like to use. Swings. So the swing is very tight, and if you look at the musculature of the arm, so if you're hitting the forehand, if you look carefully, you'll see whether there is tension rippling through that arm. I'm talking from the shoulder down to the lower arm to the wrist. Is there a lot of tension there, or are those segments moving with more elasticity? And that, to me, is the number one most important thing when you're building the forehand. We'll talk about a few other aspects too, but you have like a little kid in front of you, whether it's a red ball player or an orange ball player or whatever ball you're using. The arm needs to be elastic. So the segments of the arm, you have the wrist, the elbow joint, the shoulder joint. Those joints need to be mobile and supple. There has to be a suppleness to the way the arm is moving, and those joints have to be loose when you swing. It's a little tricky because at impact, those joints there's a firmness that happens. So, but pre-impact and post-impact, there should be a lot of elasticity and looseness. So at right, biomechanically, as you're getting closer to impact, there is a tensioning that happens in anticipation of the impact, and in order to keep the racket head stable. But in general, I think you guys know what I'm getting at. There needs to be like a looseness in the arm, a looseness in the wrist. The wrist needs to whip. And one of the ways that I found to get that is to not teach. I've talked about this a million times. You guys, if you're one of my students, I know a lot of my students and families are listening to this. I'm preaching to the choir here. You've heard this a lot, but the follow through, the traditional follow through, is killing forehands across this country. The traditional follow through, where you go from low to high, and I know exactly how coaches teach it. And you maybe you step in. We'll talk about the footwork a little next. And you extend a little, and maybe you catch the racket out in front, or you follow through to your ear, or you wrap the follow through around your neck. You basically follow through low to high. You go your swing path low to high, and then you catch the racket. You follow through above to the top of the shoulder, to the neck. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. And it's very rarely taught well with suppleness and elasticity. For some reason, that teaching cue is killing the looseness in the arm of so many players. And so I face a daily battle trying to unwork that, to try to unwind the tightness in the players' forehands that I see. It's a daily, weekly battle. Almost every player who comes to me from like a typical club around the country, obviously depends on the place. Very rarely do I see a kid with the arm relaxed, with a nice fluidity and a nice elasticity. And That is a huge issue when you're developing the forehand, because the best forehands are whip-like, and the arm is relatively loose. I mentioned that the tension varies in the arm, so as you're coming up to the impact, the arm will stiffen a little pre-impact. But basically, post-impact, there's also, when you wiper and you follow through, there's a lot, the looseness returns again. And in the pre-impact phase, there should be a lot of looseness, so you can get that lag and the snap through. It's either called the lag or snap, or like Rick Macy calls it, the flip. There should be a lot of you have to create lag and whip in the arm pre-impact, and then there should be. And let's talk about post-impact of the ball. There should be. I found the best way to try to develop looseness and elasticity in the arm is to go big on the windshield wiper finish, go big on the rotational finish. So that's where you make a big pronation at the end of the post impact, and you rotate your forearm. So there's a big internal shoulder rotation. Rick Macy would call that turning the doorknob. But I say, like, go big on that. You should exaggerate that with young kids. It should be this is radical for coaches who are steeped in traditional methodology.